Tell me a little bit about how you manage the optimism with truth.
And this is how I like to do rehabs. And some guys are
Mhm.
hesitant to kind of like do it. The first thing is that you need a solid diagnosis, right? You need to understand exactly what's the injury or what are we dealing with, right? Once you know that, somehow you can put a timeline. So the timeline, you have to respect that. And sometimes the risk reward is just like, you put a guy that is not ready to play, he can get hurt again, or he's not going to perform. So at the end of the day, it's like a lose-lose situation, right? So they need to understand, okay, we're dealing with this. This is the time that's gonna take. Don't worry, brother. I mean, you are gonna get like we're gonna get here. You're gonna be fine. Everything is gonna work out. You're gonna be back on the field. You're gonna be healthy. You're gonna be able to perform. You're gonna be able to accomplish all your goals, everything. But to get here, we need to go from A to B to C to D, right?
Welcome to Limitless Minds, the podcast where curiosity meets greatness. Each week, co-hosts DJ Eitzen and Harry Wilson sit down with some of the most exceptional individuals across sports, business, and beyond. From world-class athletes and peak performance coaches to visionary CEOs, entrepreneurs, and influential authors, they dive deep into the stories and strategies that drive extraordinary success. If you're ready to discover what it takes to be truly limitless and push beyond your own limits, you're in the right place.
All right, on today's episode of Limitless Minds, we have Manuel Valdivieso. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist. He's recognized by the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And he served as the assistant strength coach for the Dallas Mavericks from 2019 to the 2023 season. And prior to this role there, he was the personal physiotherapist for NBA player Kristaps Porzingis during KP's ACL recovery a number of years ago. In recent years, he's also worked with my brother, NFL quarterback Russell Wilson, focusing on performance optimization and injury prevention. He was integral in helping Russ return back from his calf injury entering the 2024 NFL season. His expertise in strength and conditioning has been instrumental in enhancing player performance and maintaining athletic health at the professional level. He's a fantastic guy. He works his tail off, and I've gotten to know him pretty well over the last couple of years, and so happy to share him with you. Enjoy. Today we have Manuel Valdivieso. He's a good friend of mine. For our listeners, a little context, Manuel for the last couple of years has been working closely with my brother Russell, in kind of all areas of, his kind of, body work and strength and conditioning and fortunately yet unfortunately, some areas of recovery, but whether it be from an injury or just recovering from, a 4-quarter battle on a Sunday or a Monday or a Thursday or a Saturday. It seems like every day,
every Christmas day. Or you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, right. And I've seen Manuel like work his tail off, you know what I mean, and awesome. And go above and beyond, without a flinch, without batting an eyelash, and I know Russell appreciates that because I was actually talking about the other day about it, and it's like Manuel is like world class, man, and I agree with that. And of course I get my little glimpses, so and kind of come into the room and check in, but outside of that, we haven't got a chance to really, like I was just saying, like spend some QT, some quality time, just kind of learning more about your background and how the hell you ended up here, if you will. Yeah. And so, I'd love to really start there. You know what I mean? You've worked with some, world-class organizations in the world of sports. You've worked with some world-class athletes, some elite athletes across a few different sports. And I'd love to, for you to walk us through a little bit of your journey in kind of this strength conditioning, recovery, and physical therapy space. And ultimately kind of what inspired you to kind of do that work.
Okay. Thank you, Harry, for the introduction. It's a pleasure for me to be here too. Always most of the times when I see you, it's like game day. We have a lot going on. I had to get Russ ready for the game, and we don't really have time to kind of like speak the way we want to, right? So, for me, how I say, it's a great honor to speak with you guys today here, and I appreciate it. My background. Sometimes I question myself, or I think how I end up like working for Russell, right? The first time I spoke with Russ, I could not believe that Russ was actually calling me, right? So I even questioned myself how I ended up here. But so I was a former basketball player, I was one of the best players from my generation in Spain. I'm from Spain. Mm-hmm. So I play alongside with the national team of Spain with the Gasol brothers, Rudy Fernandez. He also played in the NBA. So my generation was a pretty good generation of basketball players. So I was one of the best players, growing up, not only in Spain, also from Europe. And so actually, well, I was one of the youngest players to become professional overseas, at that time. And unfortunately, I developed some health conditions, as you know, I'm diabetic. So I developed my diabetes when I was 20. And somehow, like everything was kind of like going perfect, and it shifted to a way where my body could not like really like take all the loading, from games, travel. So I started dealing with injuries.
Yeah.
So it was very frustrating. So at some point, I kind of like shift my vision to kind of like became a good physical therapist, right? A strength coach, and I studied a lot of like different like things that could help me, stay keep playing, right?
Yeah.
So somehow I ended up like working as a head PT on the first professional team that I played overseas, right, in Sevilla. That's my hometown. And one of the years that I was working there, we had a very, very talented team. We had 3 players that were drafted by NBA teams in the same year, which I believe is the only team who ever accomplished that thing, right? So we had 3 guys drafted in the same draft. One of them was Porzingis, Kristaps Porzingis, KP. He got drafted by the Knicks, So my relationship with KP was very close since he was like a young kid. So at some point, like I was spending with Chris a lot of time in summer, getting him ready for the NBA season, and I ended up working with him full time. Moved to New York. Unfortunately, he had to deal with a tab injury. He torn the ACL. It was very unfortunate because it was a play where his knee was bumped after a dunk. It was a direct contact injury, which is kind of like not the mechanism that most of the ACL injuries like happens, right? So what happened was that he got traded to the Mavs, and I was doing the entire rehab for KP. So at the time that I landed in Dallas, I had a like when you connect with people, like, very easy. So as soon as I landed there, then I really loved the entire organization. I think they had the perception that I could be valuable for them, so they decided to hire me. In this case, not as a PT, more focused on like the strength and conditioning like department.
Yeah.
So I as soon as I land in Dallas, like Casey Smith, he was the person running all the medical and performance department. He's considered probably the best in his field. He was more than 20 years with the Mavs. He was with the U.S. basketball team with Kobe, like LeBron, all these guys. Now he's the VP of the New York Knicks. So my connection with Case was very easy. Like my philosophy of work and the way he saw things like are very, very similar. So it was very easy for me to kind of like land on the Mavs. It was in the middle of the season. So that year I saw the last couple months of Dirk Nowitzki as a player. It was the rookie season for Luka Doncic. It was the rookie season for Jalen Brunson.
Oh wow!
So and I was there a couple of years. I was four seasons with the Mavs, and KP got traded to the Wizards. So I left the franchise, because obviously like I felt that my connection with KP was very strong by then. He was in a contract year, so I thought that KP needed me more than the Mavs by then. So I left with him. We went to Washington. It was a contract year, and somehow how the world works. Like a doctor that was doing things with KP. She knew Russ. And Russ was kind of like he needed like someone like me in his staff, So he decided to. And one day she said, "Hey, Manuel, Russell Wilson's gonna call you." I said, "Russell Wilson's gonna call me?"
You're like, I do basketball. I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm a basketball player.
I'm from Spain. We don't really like follow football like that. So it was kind of like weird for me. But hey, as soon as I spoke with Russ, Like asking Russ, what do you need in what do you really need in someone like me, you know? So he told me that he actually I learned a lot from Russ because he teach me like what he needed, you know. He teach me about football. Like he was patient, I think. And you know, I try my best to be supportive for Russ, to bring everything I have to help him. So I mean, I think we had success. We were having success together. So I'm
Yeah.
very I feel blessed, you know, lucky. I love my work with Russ. Russ is your brother, but he's truly special. So I feel very lucky.
It's
That's
great.
awesome, man.
It's really
Yeah.
good. When
Yeah.
when you're going into a situation like that, and you know, and you're switching teams or working with different players, how do you build trust with the team, the organization, the players?
That's a good question. I think you know the fact that I've been also like not at this level. You know, I didn't.
Hmm.
I was not a like that caliber type of player, but I played. You know, I know how players feel. You know, when things are not going well, or when they are feeling good. You know, I think I get it like right away. So
Mm.
um, that helped me a lot to kind of like land in the professional kind of like going from like be a player to be part of the medical staff, right?
Hmm.
So I think what the players value from me is that when they are dealing with something, their problems are my problems, right? So I don't stop until I find the right solution, the right person, the right therapy, the right whatever, right? My wife, she tell me sometimes it's like you should try to disconnect, but I can't, you know, until I have we are where we need to be. Like my brain is like looking for solutions 24/7, right?
Yeah.
So
And I've seen that in real time, Manuel. I mean,
That's
like,
cool.
late hours, you know what I mean?
yeah,
Early hours, late hours, it's around the clock. And, I think you make a great point about building, how one way that in which you be able to build trust, obviously your knowledge, obviously if you're knowledgeable and you provide value, people begin to trust you, but also that whole aspect of it's got to be unique in your space to have, somebody in your position that has played the game, right. And played it professionally. Right.
Mm.
That's probably very unique. I mean, I've had a lot of trainers and strength conditioning coaches that, maybe strength and conditioning coaches played this said sport, but in many cases they had not or never had, and certainly not at a high level. And so I think there's a lot of value because that communication and kind of understanding where they've been and and where kind of the dynamic of which they're trying to accomplish is something that you have a frame of reference on that most do not.
That's right.
So I think there's a tremendous amount of it. I got a question for you. So I told DJ, I was like, yo, Manuel's a big dude. Like he's tall. I try to throw out a height. I won't say it because I don't want to be really wrong. How tall are you?
I'm 6'5".
Okay,
Yeah.
6'5". I gave you 6'6".
Oh, you said 6'1". You said
No, I
6'1".
did not. No, I did not. Don't let him lie to you. Don't let him lie to you,
I'm
Manuel.
6'5",
I told him, I was like, Manuel's got to be every bit of 6'6". But what position did you
Yeah,
play?
what position?
I play shooting guard. I was
Okay.
actually
Oh,
like
he can
pretty.
shoot.
I
I
was
like
pretty.
that. I play shooting guard. I like how you put that. I play shooting guard. That's same as me. I play point guard
Yeah.
at
Yeah,
47.
yeah. I was pretty physical, you know. So when I start having like injuries and health issues and all of that, it was very frustrating for me. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm now I feel blessed, you know, because everything that happened in my life, you know, put me in the situation that I am right now. So
Yeah.
yeah, it worked out perfectly.
Yeah. So
Did you play with Serge Ibaka then too as well, or
Uh,
no?
no, I didn't play with Serge Ibaka, but I am very close to his agent, and
Okay.
I saw him land in Spain when he was a kid. And as soon as I saw him, I said, "This guy's gonna play in the NBA."
Wow.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we but I never played against him, not against
Okay.
Serge.
Yeah.
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 So Manuel, so like I want to talk a little about like, when obviously you work with individuals in some cases, KP, Russ, et cetera. But also when you think about organizationally, where you fit, like, a lot of people who are listening maybe don't necessarily know what that everyday work is. You know what I mean? Like from an organization perspective, maybe can you give us a little color on like what that everyday work is with like a Dallas Mavericks or
Yeah.
Wizards or what it be?
Well, I mean, yeah. So I've worked. So I've seen organizations from the inside, right? I work for the Mavs, but I've seen also the way that the Knicks they were functioning by like a couple years ago. The Wizards, Now, obviously, I saw a little bit about the Broncos, the Steelers now, the Mavs. The Mavs, they hire me, but I never lost perspective that even the Mavs, they paid me. Obviously, I was an employee of the Dallas Mavericks, but I always thought, and I think that's what I like to think is that I work for the players, right?
Yep.
Because sometimes that they're gonna be like different like conflicts between the franchise, the player, whatever, right? So I always let me put you an example. I like to track data, right? I like to do assessments of the players because it gives me a good insight about like what we're doing, well, if we're going in the right direction, we need to change something about the training, about like whatever, right? Sometimes the players are hesitant to give you data because they can feel that you are going to use it somehow against them, right? That you're going to do a report to them and they're going to see the metrics going down or whatever. So I always told my guys, I was like, man, I mean, I feel you, I want to help you. I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to do a report to the GM or whatever, about like, hey, this guy is losing, I don't know, like explosiveness or whatever. If that's the case, how do I help you get where you need to be, right? So working for the Mavs, for example, was incredible because it all started with Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban is a very, very energetic guy, optimistic, like brings the energy, brings the juice, he just wants you to kind of like give your all, and then he gets you back. Like for real. I've seen that when COVID happened, right? We were all scared because it was, COVID. We didn't know what to expect, right? There were teams that they kind of like somehow stopped paying the employees, Mark Cuban was like, literally, he took care of all of us, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with Mark. So, and then like everyone else kind of like follows that, right? So it was a family. So work for the Mavs, and we actually like said that the Mavs family, right? And Mark Cuban says that to you. I still speak with him sometimes, and he always tell me you will always be part of the Mavs family, right? So working an organization like that, it's incredible. It's amazing. Yeah. You go to work feeling like you are. It's something yours. You're feeling like like it's obviously it's not your team, but you feel like this is my team, right? So work with organizations like that it's incredible, right? Then I've worked. Unfortunately, I don't want to say names, but I've worked with different organizations, as like outsider, but I try to kind of like help the team also. And the egos kind of like play a certain role, so they kind of like not all the teams are very open to work with kind of like the players' personnel, right? They feel a little bit kind of like, who is this guy? What is he doing? Like so it depends. It depends on the team, right? It depends.
Yeah. Are you traveling with, like, say when you were with the Mavericks? Did you travel with them?
I travel everywhere, man.
Okay.
And that's challenging for the family. I went to the NBA bubble in Orlando. That was pretty crazy. It was like literally, it was like 2 months in a hotel. You could not really do nothing.
Right.
So yeah, I was traveling with the Mavs for 4 seasons, and I was part of the staff that went to the NBA bubble. So yeah, it's challenging. The NBA schedule it gets you because you don't really have days off. You travel, you play games, kind of like you the game at like, I don't know, 11:30. You pack everything, you land in a different city, you play again, then you pack everything, you land in a different city. It's hard.
In basketball, are they working out before the game, after the game? What does the workouts look like?
It depends. It depends on the player. There are players, we always like to do micro workouts to kind of like get a quick activation, before the games,
Okay.
But it depends on the player. There are players that they like to lift weights and to train after the games, especially the low minute guys, I would say they can do that, more, because then practice day for them is kind of like a game day. So they kind of like try to get in shape when it's a practice day. So they kind of like run, up and down, they play more like 5-on-5 situations. There are guys that they like to lift after the games. and they're just guys to kind of like do just a little bit of something before the game to kind of like get the activation, that they need to be able to perform. And there are some others that they lived in kind of like in practice days, right? So it depends. It depends on the player.
Okay.
When I got my job with the Mavs, that was one of the things that I think we implemented, right? So when I left, we were 5 strength coaches, right? When I got there, it was one strength coach, Jeremy Hall-Sopel. He was the head strength coach by then. I consider him the best strength coach in the NBA. Like in my opinion, he's the best strength coach I ever met. And he didn't really have like a big staff, So it was him and another guy and a girl that was kind of like doing an internship. But then we made the staff bigger, so we could have like 3 or 4 players each, right? So when you just train 3 guys, you can somehow dive into like what is exactly what they need. And some guys, how I say, they need to lift after the game. Some guys they lift in practice days, So you go into like the individual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's good stuff. I mean, so I'm curious about, especially when you're working with individual players, whether it be when you were working with the Mavs and focused on the players themselves or the individuals you worked with, KP, Russ, et cetera, each of these, you've seen a lot of recovery work, from minor stuff, like things that are just bugging athletes that are like kind of chronic stuff to major injuries, ACLs, calf tears, et cetera. Right.
That was a tough one.
with KP, for example, because it was an ACL, right? It was a contact injury ACL, which was unique. What was your approach to helping him bounce back? Now, you don't have to give us all the X's and O's on like, the PT components, but what we're really curious about, and we imagine, is that there's a mindset component to this, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a grind, as we know, to like come back from something, particularly if you've had multiple injuries or you're late in your career or you're early in your career and trying to,
right,
plant your feet and show people that you can be here for a while. So depending on the player's circumstance, the mindset and the resilience factor and the adversity tolerance has to play into it. I'd be curious to get your insights on whether it be KP or Russ or anybody else, like how do you see mindset being a critical piece to the recovery, and how do you help them in that area? What are you saying to them? What are you kind of filling their minds with that's helpful for them?
That's a great question. I think it depends, when you are talking about like a long rehab, like an ACL, we knew that it was going to take a long time. And I told KP, because he was kind of like in a contract year, like he wanted to come back. And I said, Chris, we just need to bulletproof your knee, like you are 22 years old. So we just need to make sure that knee is gonna be like literally bulletproof. I like to use that word, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we were facing a rehab that was gonna take at least 12 months. It's a year, right? So when you have to face a 1-year rehab, it's tough. It's tough for the player, but it's also tough for the PT. Like I did the entire rehab, like since day 1 to the last day, right? So. And sometimes you feel in that process, like it's like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, and you cannot really like take off. You cannot like really like you don't feel yourself. Your body has changed, and you're being in pain. The surgery is hard, and so you feel that you are walking like on the desert, right? It's like when am I gonna see water, right? Like so it's kind of like it's boring, right? It's boring. So I always like to think about. When I do rehabs, I think myself, right? I can never be the weak link. I always had to bring like energy, juice. I have to be optimistic. I have to speak life. Hey, bro, you're gonna be fine. Hey, you're gonna come back stronger. Like we have to be telling those positive like messages. We have to put those all the time out there, because there is a lot of people saying, oh, KP is done. He's never going to come back, from an ACL. You know what I'm saying? So you have all that negativity and also your fears. Like as a PT too, when you have to start, you have a guy that is, talking about like somebody's career and health, and you start running, for example, right? You're kind of like, hey, today we're going to start running. It's kind of like, or we're going to start like jumping and dunking and like doing things. You are kind of like also like, I mean, what's going to happen here today, right?
Yeah.
So somehow you need to find that security, obviously, because of your experience, like all the research that you do and that you follow kind of like a process. You go from A to B to C to D, right? But you have also some fear sometimes, but at the end of the day, I think it's about like focus on what you can control, like attack the rehab, attack that day, just do the best you can, like in each field, right? Be positive always, like speak life about it, and be patient. Sometimes it's just like you need to be patient. It's tough. I'm not gonna lie to you, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yeah. No, it's really clear. I mean, it sounds like, the mental aspect of some of these injuries is just as much as the physical rehab. And you being there side by side with them is obviously really beneficial. So that's cool that you get to walk alongside and speak life into them and be optimistic. I was thinking about when I was a kid, I played at this camp called 5-Star Basketball Camp. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but my coach was actually Rick Brunson, Jalen's father.
yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So do you know Rick at all?
Yeah, I know him. I know him.
Okay.
I mean,
So
we don't have a relationship, but I met him before. Yeah.
So what was interesting about Rick is like it seems like he was very much like he played at Temple, and he was very much like Jalen in terms of his work ethic and as an undersized guard. I'd love to hear, because you said you worked with Jalen, or and you were there his rookie year. Anything that you see that stands out with him, and how does that tie to his success in the league so far?
Well, JB has an amazing work ethic. He was this type of guy that we will have like we play a game, practice the next day in the morning. He will show up in the afternoon
Mm,
to shoot some hoops, like and like to do some extra work. So JB, he has that work ethic that it's very very impressive, right? Then he's very skilled, and JB works on that. He works in his fundamentals. You can see, he's all the time like he plays a lot of one-on-ones. He does a lot of like individual work. At that time in Dallas, he had a shooting coach, Pete Patton. Now I think Pete is with the Chicago Bulls, I think.
mm,
And he was with the Timberwolves before, and they were always kind of like working on the details. So and JB, he made his way, like he came, like he was in a late second round pick. I think he was the last pick of that draft. I want to say,
mm.
or I think,
Yeah.
and he
Late.
made his way to be the franchise player of the New York Knicks, which is incredible. It's amazing. But I have to say that it was not easy for him. He worked hard. He's a great dude, always like very polite, educated guy. Everyone loves to work with JB. So it's just like all his
Very
success, like he earned it.
That's
So
really cool. Yeah.
yeah,
That's
it
awesome.
is.
That's dope.
It's
Well,
amazing.
what's kind of neat is when you're talking about the recovery aspect for these players, and having certainly had a, some sort of perspective and lens given, my my perspective with Russ, and I can imagine for other players, like I imagine there's sometimes a battle with said player on differing timelines as far as recovery, right? So a player, you mentioned some players, like I think you mentioned KP, Kristaps Porzingis being in a contract year, right? You worked with Russ, and he's kind of gone a couple different teams, and he has aspirations to continue to play, right? And certainly, depending on if you're a young guy or a seasoned guy, like you're also trying to protect your turf, like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, like I don't want some young guy coming in and taking my spot. Hey, I'm trying to make the squad, whatever it is. So like, how do you handle that from a communication perspective with a player that because you're knowledgeable, like what this timeline should be, right? Just from a sheer mapping out to be bulletproof, right? Just have, the knee bulletproof, to have the elbow, the shoulder bulletproof, but that player has a timeline that's half the time, right? And so like, how do you keep them engaged in doing the right work and making the right choices, right? Especially if you're not around. How do you manage that?
That's a great question, Harry, because sometimes we are talking about guys that the reason why they are so great is because they don't put limits to themselves, right?
Right.
So
Right.
they see them, early on their lives, they saw themselves kind of like winning the Super Bowl, right? That's why they made it, right? So you are talking with literally you're talking with the greatest athletes ever and with high performance, and you're telling them, bro, you cannot do this right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like for them, it's like, what are you saying, man? I have goals, I have things that I need to do right now. I don't have time to kind of like sit down, watch. But first of all, I think it's challenging for them, to understand that sometimes they just need to kind of like wait and let the body heal, right?
Yeah.
It's very
Yeah.
challenging for the players. So you have to speak to them from a love perspective. Even if you
Yeah.
have arguments and discussions and sometimes you don't agree, but you have to always understand, and you need to try to explain them, bro. I'm telling you this because I care about you. It's not like
Yeah.
I'm here just like thinking about. I mean, I think about what's the best for you, right?
Yeah.
So it's challenging sometimes because, like, I mean, for example, if we can talk about Russ like injury this year, right? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
you think it's okay if we talk about that, Harry?
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. Of course.
So,
Yeah.
so, so when Russ had the calf injury, it was very unfortunate because it was kind of like the first day of training camp, right? He was just doing something. I don't want to go there, but
Yeah.
they made him do something that, in my opinion, he shouldn't do. But unfortunately, okay, the injury happens, right? So now you speak with Russ and you tell him like, Russ, this is gonna take some time, right? And he will tell you like, man, I mean, come on, bro. I mean, I never lost a game, in the Super Bowl. I can't play. He can literally go through anything. And you have to explain, I had to explain Russ, it's not about like pain tolerance. It's not about you being able to function. I know you can I know you can go there, and you will tolerate any pain that you'll be able to like fight through it and you will be able to kind of like stay there. But it's a thin line in between. It's like risk reward. If we try to kind of like short the timeline that you're going to be out in this specific injury, the risk of re-injury is higher, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like at the end of the day, it's about love and trust, right? So
Well, you mentioned
you-
like the other piece to it is you mentioned positivity and optimism, which is obviously a great tool and important as far as keeping guys motivated and seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, so they're not feeling like they're walking in the desert with no water, right? But I imagine that if you're overly positive, right, or overly optimistic, it can also in their mind accelerate their timeline. They're thinking, okay, like Manuel said, like I look great, and Manuel said, you know what I mean. So there's probably I would love for you to tell me a little bit about the balance of, because we talk a lot about on this podcast and some of the work we do with Limitless Minds about this concept called neutral thinking, right? It's yes, positive's great, but positive's hard to get to, and there's not a lot of data that supports that it works. On the other side, negativity works. The problem is that it works negatively, and there's a ton of data that supports that, right? And so in this case, you'd certainly want to make sure that athlete is not going down negativity rabbit holes, talking, making sure their self-talk is tight, that it's right, that it's working for them, not against them. And I think as far as how you present and communicate, I imagine that there's got to be a level of, hey, here are the facts, man. Like here are the facts. We can't argue these facts, right? Here's the data, right, if you will, right? And using that as that kind of the compass, right, to kind of keep people from being overly positive, overly optimistic, accelerating their timeline, and or on the other flip side, going down negativity, rabbit holes. Like, tell me a little bit about how you manage that optimism with truth. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, the first thing, this is how I like to do rehabs, and some guys are hesitant to kind of like do it. The first thing is that you need a solid diagnosis, right? You need to understand exactly what's the injury or what are we dealing with, right? So that's the first thing. Once you know that, somehow you can put a timeline. So the timeline, you have to respect that, because otherwise you're just betting, And sometimes the risk reward is just like you put a guy that is not ready to play out there he can get hurt again, or he's not going to perform. So at the end of the day, it's like a lose-lose situation, right? So they need to understand, okay, we're dealing with this. This is the time that's going to take. So the positivity here and the speak live and all of that is like, don't worry, brother. I mean, you are gonna get like we're gonna get here. You're gonna be fine. Everything is gonna work out. You're gonna be back on the field. You're gonna be healthy. You're gonna be able to perform. You're gonna be able to accomplish all your goals, everything. But to get here, we need to go from A to B to C to D, right? So that's not negotiable in theory, right? So, and that's when you have sometimes this type of like arguments, because the guys been somehow for them it's like, man, I'm hurt, like my body's not feeling good, like I see all the fears, right? Like, am I gonna be able to play? Are they gonna take my role here? I mean, it's so yeah, it's like, okay, it's reality, I like what you said, stay neutral. So we always say this: never too high, never too low, right? So just stay neutral. You attack the day. You do everything you possibly can to get better that day, right? And then we need to kind of like see ourselves like healing, see ourselves like having success, see ourselves like hitting a three, or throwing the ball for a touchdown. So that's where the positivity and the optimistic and all of that mindset, speak life, plays a role here. That's how I see it.
That's really good. How, as I'm thinking about this recovery and how, and some of the work that you do from a physical perspective, how does diet play into what you do, and how do you work to ensure, because I'm guessing you could do the best workouts and really push yourself, but if your diet is garbage, the results are going to not be optimal. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I studied too. I'm not a dietitian, but I have a degree in nutrition and dietetics. That's one of the things that I always give value to, because at the end of the day, like obviously when you are a young athlete, somehow diet is not that important, but it's important that you create healthy habits, right? So when I have young athletes, somehow they feel that I can just do whatever, but my body is just, because I'm a freak, and I'm a great athlete, I can just do it. But you're going to pay the price sooner or later if you don't create healthy habits, right? So for me, diets is always like, it's very individual, right? It depends by the individual. Some people like fast and do intermittent fasting and it works well for them. Some people is vegetarian and it works well for them. Some people is carnivore. So I think somehow you have to find what works the best for each individual, right? But what I can tell you is that my approach when it's about nutrition and dietetics is always about eating true food, right? When I means true food, it's just like food that you will find like out there, in the world, right? So I don't like processed food. Try to avoid it as much as possible,
Yep.
And I always think about like how to put in your system the highest amount of nutrients, micronutrients as possible, because that's what I think your body really needs. It's not about how many calories you put in there. It's about like the nutrients that you have, right?
Yep.
So how I say, I don't work as a dietitian or nutritionist or a performance chef, but definitely has a huge value in someone's life and health, not only in like players, right? If you want to perform at your peak, nutrition is one of the key stones of anyone's like success, right?
Yeah.
That's how I feel. And you need to find what diet or what works the best for you.
It's good.
Yeah. One thing I was thinking about was, strength conditioning and PT, very standard across the world of sports, right? From Pee-wee to pro, right? From college, NFL, professional sports alike. It's really, certainly more than common. It's a standard to have strength and conditioning coaches and PT folks on staff. As you may know, one of our co-founders, the late Trevor Moawad, was a mental conditioning coach, right? I call him the modern day godfather of the space. He was part of he spearheaded that mental conditioning programming done at IMG Academy. and then would work with Kirby Smart and at Georgia, Jimbo Fisher, of course Nick Saban when he was in Alabama, Mel Tucker when he was at Michigan State, Chip Kelly. He worked in the NBA with Billy Donovan and
Billy Donovan, yeah, that's right.
yeah, Billy Donovan and Doc Rivers. But when we first started working together at this company, he would always tell us these, kind of give us these anecdotes around like the relevance of mental conditioning, right? Yet that kind of almost like the hidden gem of mindset and mental conditioning for athletes. I think 5 to 10 years ago, when mental health and anything in that category was not as on the forefront, not on the surface, not really something people talked about, I feel like a lot of those individuals were kind of hidden, like, they're like the Wizard of Oz, right? Like you never saw them, right? You never knew they were there. A lot of teams, I don't think, wanted to expose what they thought was a competitive advantage. When you've worked with the Mavericks, for example, or even if you've been kind of adjacent to an organization working directly with an athlete, do you see like mindset and mental conditioning coaches working with these teams often? Is there anybody that you've worked closely with in that area with any of these organizations that you could tell us about?
Yeah, actually, when I was a player, like long time ago, because I'm getting old now, I remember, I remember teams were not like using kind of like the sports psychologists or the mindfulness or mindset. Like it was something that kind of like nobody was doing, right?
Yeah.
So I remember I had a conversation. I was struggling like shooting free throws, right?
Mhm.
And I had a conversation with a sports psychologist long time ago, and he said, you're gonna do this. Once you are getting ready to shoot a free throw, you're gonna count numbers backwards, right? So you're gonna go 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Count that.
Yeah.
That thing was like sounds ridiculous to me. It was like, what's talking about, man? But somehow, it kind of like what I think they were trying to, or he was trying to do, to kind of like just execute, right? You've done something thousands of times, so you kind of like limit your mind, kind of like, and just execute, right? So it helped me out, right?
Really
so
cool.
that was the first time that I had, that was the first time that I had like someone kind of like giving me tools to kind of like control my mind, right? So down the road, when I go to Dallas, one of the persons that has like a very important voice in not only with the players, also with the direction that the franchise takes, sometimes with the coaches, with the GMs, with the personnel, like he interacts with everyone. His name is Don Kalkstein, right? So he's been there for like 30 years.
Mhm.
And it's interesting, because this is my take, for the conversations that I had with him. If you go, we call him DK. You go to DK's office, he's gonna make a lot of questions. So
Mhm.
he's just making you questions, so you somehow end up with the answer. So he
Yeah.
asks things, and the answer is on you, right at the end, right? So I really give value to it, and I truly think that there is so this is how I see it, and this is my belief, right? This is my personal belief. So
Mhm.
I don't think you can have um, a good mental stage, if your body is not feeling good. So
Yeah.
when people is kind of like struggling with anxiety, or I don't know, things like this, my only advice is like start getting in a better shape, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when your body feels better, your mind feels better, but that works in a different direction too. If your mind is not in the right spot, your body, you're not gonna feel good anyway, right?
Yeah.
So nowadays, like all the mindfulness, and like all this type of like sports psychologists, like they are really playing a big role into like sports and performance and like competition. It's crucial. It's like having your PT. I think it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's really powerful. When you were telling your story about counting backwards free throws, I'm thinking of conversations and in talking to Trevor where he would say that you can only think about one thing at a time. So so as you're just thinking and focusing on counting backwards, your muscle memory and all the thousands of free throws that you shot throughout your life, that kicks in, and you're not thinking, okay, is it is so and so in the crowd? I missed my last three, all these things, that negative thoughts that go through your head, you eliminate that by that simple action. And that's
Yeah,
really,
it's
that's super
interesting,
powerful.
I think Trev called it the law of substitution, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And I think a lot of individuals, because of course our listeners are athletes, they're business people, they're salespeople, they're mothers or fathers, they're anyone, right? And I think this is one reason how this one way this applies is that we typically, the world gives us a lot of recognition and reward for the perception of like multitasking, right? When somebody's multitasking, it's like, oh, they almost kind of brag about it, right? Like, oh, multitasking, man, I'm getting a lot done. But that you really cannot multitask, right? It's really all it is task switching, right?
Yeah.
And so as a result, you can't do one or task A, task B, or task C optimally if you're trying to do it all at the same time, right? And so whether it's a free throw or a sales call or or spending time with your kids, right? It requires you to really focus in on that one task in order to do it optimally. Or you can just reserve the right to say I'm going to give it a B+ instead of an A. You know what I mean? So I think that's really relevant to individual contributors, leaders, athletes, etc.
So important. Just being present. Being present.
You can try to do 8, come down from 8.
I'm about 90%, so that probably gets me up to about 95 now, right?
Hey, the beast. What did Trevor say? Even the beast can get beastier.
Even the beast can get beastier. True. That's a great point.
Another 20 points on the season. You know what I mean? So,
my son says, your old man's league, Dad. Your old man's league. Go use that in your old man's league.
Exactly.
Yes. You've mentioned your wife. Do you have kids? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. I'm married. I have two girls. One of them was born in Sevilla before I moved to the US. This is my 8th season in the US now. So and I have another one that she was born in Dallas actually, so she's American.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm with my family. That's one of the things that I try to find a balance, but it's hard, because we always, Russ and me, we say this is a lifestyle, right? So the early mornings, the late nights, the no days off, kind of like, so it's sometimes it's challenging, for the family. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep this rhythm, at some point I think I will need to kind of like slow down a little bit. I still have juice, so I still have that those goals that I want to accomplish, right? But yeah, I'm married with my wife. She plays an amazing role with me, with the family, because if she doesn't, if she couldn't like understand the life I have, I couldn't do it. So
yeah,
my wife, she plays an amazing role for me to be able to do this. And then obviously my 2 daughters, Adriana and Sophia. Adriana's gonna be 8 this weekend, and Sophia, she's 5. So
that's awesome, man.
I got a chance to meet not only Manuel's wife and Adriana and Sophia a few weeks ago, and we spent some time in Nemacolin, which is a cool resort out in kind of Southwest PA, kind of towards Morgantown, Pittsburgh.
Beautiful.
And got a chance to meet the girls, and then your wife, and then also your parents. Your parents came out. Spent some time at the holidays, so they flew out, and they're are they in Sevilla? Are they out where you're from?
Yeah, they went back to Spain. Yeah, but they came for Christmas, and we all went to Nemacolin, which is an amazing place. Yeah.
we had some long dinners, man, didn't we? Like these 4-hour dinners.
Long dinner. Yeah.
That's the Russell dinner, man. That's good. What's your favorite? What's been your favorite part of Pittsburgh so far, the city?
My favorite part of Pittsburgh is obviously where the river, the bridges, and the stadiums, the baseball stadium and the football stadium. That I love that part of the city.
That's cool. Have you had the the Permani Brothers sandwich yet? You had that sandwich yet?
I had it. Yeah.
Actually, that's my favorite. That's my favorite thing in Pittsburgh. That's a wonderful sandwich.
Yeah, my dad was actually like asking for it, and he was like, I heard that sandwiches. Yeah, I said, yeah, that. So we went to.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome.
Well, listen, Manuel, as we close, I'd just like to ask you this, like, given that you've worked with, some world-class athletes, you played with world-class athletes, you were one, right? What is working with these athletes, especially over the last, let's call it decade, what has it taught you about thriving under pressure and overcoming challenges that you leverage in your kind of personal life? And how can any of our listeners and audience apply that to their everyday life?
That's a good question, because the way I see professional athletes, and like kind of like, people that has to perform under a lot of pressure, right? Let's say an Navy SEAL, right? You are in war zones, and you have, I don't know, you have your guys, and
Mhm.
you need to make the right decision, right? All that
Mhm.
pressure, how can you, don't make a mistake, and do exactly what you need to do, without like having really like a lot of time to think, and all of this. That's what happened with athletes. That happens with, I don't know, doctors when they are in the emergency room and they have to do surgery, to save somebody's life. You know, how can you perform under those circumstances, right? So
Yeah.
obviously, like not everyone can do it.
Hmm.
You have to be very gifted, by you need to have the talent, obviously, right?
Hmm.
And you have to have, obviously, like these people, high performers, they are gifted by God, by nature. I mean, I don't know, whatever are your beliefs, right? So
Hmm.
that's one thing. But I found that preparation, it's always essential for these individuals, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they're super talented, yeah, but have you seen the work ethic? Have you
Yeah.
seen
Hmm.
how they prepare themselves, how they work, and how strong is their confidence, their self-confidence? And that's not something that you accomplish in one day. It
Right.
takes time, it takes repetition, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So true.
so at the end of the day, so at the end of the day, it's about like, it's also a habit, right? You need,
Yeah.
how I say, speak life. These
Yeah.
guys, at the end of the day, I mean, when you heard them say, I'm the best player in the world, right? If I come here and I say, hey, I'm the best PT in the world, you'll be, this guy's a little arrogant. To be able to perform at that level, they have to speak like that. They have
Yeah.
to truly believe, I am the best shooter in the world. I'm the best quarterback in the world. I am the best in the. So they prepare themselves, they work hard, they are talented, and they have this mindset, and it's a habit. They speak life over and over and over. I'm made for this. I'm going to make the last shot. I'm going to do it. I'm ready for this. Like, so
Yeah.
that's how
Yeah.
high performers, that's how they are.
I love it, man. I
That's
mean,
great.
it's what you're describing to me is, these high performers create an internal ad campaign that creates the right stories for themselves, because your mind's going to tell yourself a story regardless, right? Your subconscious is going to tell yourself a story all day, right? The subconscious thoughts, there's the data says there's 60 to 80,000 subconscious thoughts a day. There's about 6 to 8,000 conscious thoughts a day, and many of them are going to be telling us a story, and oftentimes a negative, because of how our brains work, how our brains are engineered, right? Our negativity bias, what we're consuming, social media, news, etc. So it's even more important, especially now, right, with technology and everything we have. And if I'm an athlete, you turn on ESPN, bad idea, right? Get on TikTok, bad idea. Get on
Yeah.
Instagram, probably a bad idea, right? You can do it, but
Yeah.
you just got to know that there's a cost to doing that, right? And so even more important to create these internal ad campaigns that are in that neutral to positive range, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that are going to work for you when the bullets are flying, when the rush is coming to you, and when you're in the pocket, when it's there's 5 seconds left in the game, you have the ball, whatever it is. Or in sales, you have a big number you had to go get, and you have a long 2025 or 2026 or whatever it is to get there. And so I think all of these things that you're learning from training and helping some of the world's greatest athletes recover are really applicable to anybody, right? Just
I think
because they're
so.
on a big stage and maybe get paid, have some extra zeros on their paycheck, right?
Yep.
And it's really like all of these things are not, even follow the common denominator that we all have. And so I really appreciate you sharing these stories, man, and giving us some
It's really
insights
cool.
into work that you do, because like we said at the top, I mean, we don't get a chance to kind of rap about some of those things, and it's really cool to kind of understand your history, where kind of how you got into this game. We hadn't even talked about your basketball career before, so that's really dope to learn about. So, man, I think this is valuable, dude. I appreciate you taking time, man. This is good.
Yeah. Thank you so much, man. Really
Really
appreciate it.
enjoyed the conversation we had today, guys.
Yeah,
Awesome.
man. So Limitless Minds, this is another episode. This was a good one. So make sure you share this with your friends and peers. And
Yes.
remember, you don't have to be sick to get better.